Hello, my name is Sean Reyes. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Recall Masters. And today we're going to review the 2024 State of Recalls report. It's a review of the year in automotive recalls produced by Recall Masters, and this is our 8th year in issuing this report, and I hope you'll find some value in it. The year in review begins with defining a recall, both voluntary and federally mandated NHTSA recalls. We're going to take a look at affected vehicle systems, that is, the origins of the defect that led to the recall. We're also going to review campaign by OEM brand and highlighted campaigns that contributed to the largest numbers of affected vehicles. Last year, we broke out data on EVs. This year, we're going to put an emphasis on recall compliance, that is, the repair of the recalls spanning from 2015 to current day 2025 to see how we're doing as an industry. We're also going to talk about what's in it for dealers, and I'll share my contact information so you can reach out to me if you've got any questions or need any clarification. This report focuses on recall data defined by the U.S. market only. These are U.S.-based passenger vehicles, vans, and light trucks, so there's no motorcycles, no semi-trucks, no buses, no miscellaneous items like tires, accessories, and the like. We're also focused on campaigns announced in calendar year 2024. This would also include NHTSA campaigns and OEM voluntary recalls, sometimes called TSBs, service bulletins, service actions, and any other nomenclature unique for each brand. In short, these OEM voluntary campaigns do not initially fall under federal jurisdiction. However, that can change. Let me explain. NHTSA is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Those are federally mandated recalls that need to go through an investigation process before they're issued at the federal level. Some manufacturing defects are reported by vehicle owners. Most, however, are reported by the manufacturer, and NHTSA would then open an investigation, which would lead to a formal NHTSA recall campaign if indeed there's a safety matter. Not all defects are a safety issue. At Recall Masters, we're also aggregating data on those OEM voluntary campaigns because they could evolve into a formal NHTSA recall. This next slide will illustrate the threat. So this is a year-over-year comparison of all NHTSA recalls pertaining to passenger cars, vans, and light trucks. Since OEM voluntary recalls are not under formal NHTSA jurisdiction, the data is not made public and vehicle counts are not known. You can see here that in 2024, there were 445 NHTSA campaigns, which combined with the identified 238 OEM voluntary campaigns translated into 683 campaigns for the calendar year. That's more than the 633 reported in 2023. Although total vehicles affected was lower last year, you can see the number of high-risk campaigns is significantly greater for 2024 than 2023, 505 campaigns and 351 respectively. Recall Masters assesses each campaign for risk to provide visibility for dealerships. This is especially important for OEM voluntary recalls which aren't public and not transparent outside of your own franchise brand. So if you're a Honda dealer taking in a Ford at trade-in, you won't see that there's an OEM voluntary recall unless it's viewed through our Recall Masters data. Year to year, the numbers are very similar, but make note of that high risk number, specifically the OEM voluntary recalls. 34.5% of 238 campaigns were considered high risk, much more than the 2023 numbers. This infographic plots out those recalls and assigns them to a particular vehicle system defect. These are all the NHTSA-based campaigns. None of this data on this particular infographic relates to OEM voluntary recalls. Once again, software and electronics leads the way, the most campaigns and the most affected vehicles. And really, since vehicles are becoming more like computers than machines, these recalls will continue to dominate. However, they also present a unique situation. Instead of replacing parts, technicians might simply update software with patches, and in other cases, an inspection of an electrical component might be needed, something a mobile repair van might be able to perform. So I love this infographic because it's an easy way to spot trends that are happening on the year. This year, for instance, there's a higher instance of backup camera recalls and battery fires. Last year, there was definitely more airbag recalls. Here's that same data when it comes to system defect attribution. The recall is categorized by where the defect originates. For example, if the PCM, which is the powertrain control module, causes the transmission to shift down at high speeds, locking up the rear wheels, the recall will be categorized under software and electronics because that's where the defect originated. While there's other systems that might be involved, we're really just categorizing under one primary vehicle system. And so that's why we do that analysis, so that you can see where it is that the problems originate. So in this slide, we inspect total recalls by OEM brand. The top 5 brands, Stellantis, Ford, Honda, BMW, and Tesla, in terms of total numbers of recalls, equaled 72.1% of all affected vehicles. In 2023, Stellantis, Ford, Honda, Kia, and Toyota led the top 5, which made up 67.1%. The top 10 recall campaigns accounted for 12,572,682 vehicles, which is 44.8% of all affected vehicles. Compared to 2023, the top 10 campaigns accounted for 15,098,205 vehicles, or roughly 45%. Airbags were down again in 2024, 721,580 versus in 2023, almost 1.9 million recalls. Latches were up for the year, 23 campaigns affecting almost 3.5 million vehicles versus 2023, where 25 campaigns affected a little bit over 1.2 million vehicles. Recalls that incorporated inspections, which is a mobile opportunity, were down in comparison to campaign totals, but more vehicles. So 128 campaigns affecting a little bit over 6 million vehicles for 2024 versus 2023. There were 147 campaigns, yet only a little bit more than 3.5 million incorporated some aspect of an inspection as part of the recall remedy. Recall compliance. It's just another word for a recall repair. So this is a new element to the state of recalls for 2024. We're looking back at the last 10 years of NHTSA campaigns and how well we're doing as dealers, as the auto industry, cleaning up this recall crisis. What can we learn about this data? Let's start with where we're at in 2025. All this data changes monthly as recalls are announced and vehicles get repaired. So 5 months into this year, the industry has already repaired 3.6% of the recalls announced in this calendar year, 2025. Not so great, but hey, we're still early into this recall cycle, plenty of time to come. For 2024 campaign, our repair rates jumped to 37%. Sounds pretty good until you learn that in last year, when we ran similar compliance rates, we had repaired 49.7% of that previous year's recall campaigns at the same time last year. So we're already falling behind, but let's set that aside. Going back to 2023, 54.3% have been repaired. That's more than 2 years later after they were initially announced, and just over half of them have been repaired. But the numbers continue to increase. Eventually, these newer vehicles, still under warranty, make their way into the dealership and the recall gets cleared. 2022 paints the most optimal scenario of compliance at 69.5% having been repaired. This may be as good as it gets. As you can see in the data going back further, back to 2015, that rate doesn't get much better. In fact, it's flat. Wait, why would that be? Don't recall repairs increase every year as they return to the dealer for servicing? Well, yes, however, that's really not what's happening. First of all, recalls in a campaign year don't necessarily reflect the vehicle's model year. In short, many of the vehicles are already out of warranty and no longer servicing at the dealer. There's also something called recall fatigue, and that's where vehicle owners aren't as responsive to notifications. They intend to do something about it, but they're just never getting around to doing it. Here's the takeaway. After the third year, these vehicle owners are probably never coming back to the dealership, not without a significant and comprehensive effort like that we're doing at Recall Masters. And again, if these vehicles have not been to the dealership in 3 years, the DMS data for the dealer is probably outdated and useless. So why is this important for dealers? Well, just know that all the good CP dollars are in older vehicles, which takes a bigger effort to get those individuals back into the dealership. Right when those post-warranty repairs skyrocket, those consumers are servicing in the aftermarket, and all those dollars are going elsewhere. Let's change that. I don't think I need to sell you on recalls. In fact, most dealers are relying heavily on revenues from fixed operations, so any and all traffic to the service department is good, right? So that's the obvious. So it's no secret, sales leads to service, which leads to more sales, and it's this dealership ecosystem. And that's why retention is so critical, and it's a core competency in automotive. No one's going to really argue that premise, but here are the facts. A lot of consumers purchase a new or used vehicle from the dealer and then never return for service. If they do, they're doing it in much smaller numbers every day going forward, and as they approach the end of their warranty period, they're defecting in large numbers to the aftermarket. You might have even seen the Cox study reflecting that consumers prefer the aftermarket for servicing over franchise dealerships. This isn't news for most of the people in our industry. We just don't know what to do about it. The big question is, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do to create more servicing incentives for consumers to return to the dealership? How do you keep them coming back? How do you sustain that traffic without deeply discounting and other promotions that clearly differentiate the franchise dealer from the aftermarket retail outlets? How do you drive revenue without consumer feeling gouged or taken advantage of? And how do we do a better job of delivering value and convenience for the consumer that keeps them engaged with your dealership and keeps them from going back to the aftermarket? That's our challenge, right? For all of us, because that's the competitive landscape. And the answer is recalls. It's a safety-related intervention that can only be performed by a franchise dealer and comes at no cost to the consumer. It's a chance for the dealer to roll out the red carpet, reintroduce servicing at the dealership, and through a heightened servicing experience to resolve a dangerous recall for a consumer who isn't forced to open their wallet in order to pay for it. And the warranty money for the dealer is really good, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg. Here's a little more. There's great revenue in recalls. 49 out of the 50 states have laws that mandate that warranty be reimbursed at retail rates. So you've got to stay on top of your factory filings. Make sure that you're getting the optimal reimbursement with your OEM. For customer pay, 58% of these customers opt in for additional work, right? You got the vehicle into the dealership, it's already up on the rack, you're already going to be without it for maybe a day or two. Why not take care of some of those little odds and ends that the average consumer needs? We know most of these vehicles, especially the older ones, are going to have a lot of work associated with them. We could take care of that while you've got the vehicle here. In fact, we could set that up when our US-based live agent call center works with the consumer to schedule those appointments. We're already asking them whether we can perform an MPI and whether they'd like to have any other work done. So having that already set up ahead of time is ideal. And you can only have those conversations with a real person over the phone or through text. But again, it requires interaction back and forth. The average RO size, so this is for the average repair order, is 671. So for a lot of dealers that say to me, you know, we're at capacity, or I can't really accommodate too many cars, we don't have enough technicians. Driving revenue is really going to be a matter of getting the most per RO, not really managing more cars. So if you can increase the RO size and get the revenue out of the work that you're already having to do, that's a much smarter bet. So again, I mentioned the ROI. We see 30 to 1 on average, but again, our solutions come with a 5 to 1 ROI guarantee in the first 90 days. You're really after better retention, right? So this is about combating defection and winning back those customers and slowing down and stopping the service decline. So there's ways that you can bring people back into the dealership. Obviously, a recall is one of them, but again, we also deploy other retention solutions that get consumers to come back in for those second, third, fourth visits. We can build that loyalty, but it's going to require that we deploy some solutions that are truly innovative and really drive value for consumers. 6 to 9% of these recall customers will then purchase their next vehicle from you within the next 12 months. Again, if you're going after older model years, there's going to be a lot of CP work associated with them. A lot of these consumers will then opt in to take a test drive and look at a newer model rather than paying $4,000 to $8,000 in additional repairs on an older vehicle. There's also opportunity for mobile, and this comes in our Market Smart, which we can show you vehicles that are recalled of your brand that are sitting on independent or off-brand lots. And again, for your mobile team, they can go out there and take care of these software updates, these airbags, other electronics, even inspections. Again, I think I mentioned earlier that the numbers of recalls that have an inspection component to it, you get reimbursed just for the inspection component because not all of them will then require repair. And the last thing is really risk mitigation. I mean, 2 to 6% of consumers traveling in your service lane don't get that recall resolved. And that could be anything from maybe they didn't have time, maybe you didn't have the parts, but a lot of it is you're just not properly checking. And you should be well ahead of this so that before the customer even shows up in the service lane, you should already be looking at whether they've got an open recall so the parts can be ordered and you can take care of that once they're in. So I'm not a wrestler. I don't need to twist arms. Let me just wrap up by asking you, what if nothing changes? How do you hit your revenue goals with incremental changes? Do you have the capacity to handle a lot more vehicles, or would you benefit better from increasing the average RO for the vehicles you can accommodate with the technicians, parts, and bays available to you? How do you attract owners back to your store, those with older vehicles, high in CP opportunity, who've already defected to the aftermarket? What's the value proposition to win them back? What value are you creating, and what service convenience makes them reconsider their relationship with your dealership? How do you sell them into the next new vehicle if they're not even coming back into your store? Owners facing a recall are a little anxious, they're impatient, they're scared, they have a lot of questions. So it's a whole lot more than just scheduling the appointment. Who in your store is equipped to pick up all those phone calls, answer all their questions, check for parts? And it's not just customers in your DMS. What about prospect customers who've never serviced with you? Owners who have moved into your PMA or in the neighboring PMA that may not even be aware that they've got an open recall. Recall Masters has the largest owner database in the nation. We have 5 times more owners in our database than even the OEM because we're tracking second, third, and fourth generation owners as these vehicles have changed hands in the marketplace. Not only do we back our solutions with a 5-to-1 ROI guarantee in the first 90 days, we indemnify all dealer clients when it comes to consumer privacy. You see, recall communications trumps privacy at the federal level, but there are very specific federal guidelines that we need to follow, especially when it comes to texting. The liabilities are just too great to do this out of your BDC department. For the same investment as a full-time BDC agent, Recall Masters will take this off of your shoulders. We'll do all the heavy lifting for you. All you've got to do is repair the vehicles. We handle all the data, all the technology, all the communications, the indemnification, the appointment scheduling, and the innovative retention solutions that support an ongoing relationship with these customers, along with customers in your DMS that aren't even facing a recall. They've not defected, not yet, but how long before they do? These are questions for you. I don't need to sell you, but we do want to talk to you. I know we can help, but in the least, you'll get some really good data that will help you if you decide to go in another direction. If you want to explore the opportunity around your dealership or view how other stores of your brands do in markets just like yours, then let's sit down and have a talk. If you have any questions, if you have any follow-up, you'd like to connect with me, you'd like to have this report or this PowerPoint, if you'd like to see the data of owners surrounding your dealership, just reach out to me by connecting on my LinkedIn or emailing me at sean@recallmasters.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this review of the state of recalls for 2024.